or is it cynical you've known?
Our speaker today on this theme and speaking on the intersection of corruption and creativity is Mr. Bill Aleshire. He's worked in staff positions at the Capitol, both in the Senate and the House. He's worked on political campaigns, trying to get people elected to governor. But then he's also worked on political campaigns where he's tried to get himself elected, and he was successful in that, both as a tax collector after just having a bad experience at the tax collector's office. No one's ever had that. Well, this man decided to do something about it. And then also as Travis County judge. He now has his own law firm where he is tackling issues around public policy. When I talk to him, he knows everything that's happened in the state in the last, well, let's see, what's the math, 40 plus years? Yeah, well, and he knows the people behind it. So I can think of no one better to introduce this topic to us and think about it creatively with us. I'm so thankful that he's here to speak on it, Mr. Bill Aleshire.
Well, let's start with a footnote. I noticed there is a report out today that the Austin City Auditor has exposed a COVID-era testing firm here in Austin who stole $1.1 million of the COVID money, and that's the Morning Press. Well, not to start with a depressing note, it's just a fresh topic. This is a tough assignment. And I talked to Ben. I didn't know about y'all, and I went on your website and I looked at the other programs, and I thought, this is out of place. How am I going to do this? Corruption? With all the positive and uplifting kind of topics and folks that you have had. And then I had to think about it and take that challenge. How could I, with my experience, actually help see the intersection between corruption and creativity? I hope I succeed. But I'd like to know a little more about you. Just with a quick show of hands. How many of you have been in Texas for less than 10 years? How many of you have been in Austin for less than 5 years? Very good. And how many of you have ever worked in a government job? Not many. How many of you have personally witnessed something in your workplace that you consider to be corruption? Wow. Which helps me make a point. You won't find corruption just in political circles and in government. It exists in the private sector as well. Ironically, in my half a century of experience, it is almost easier to root out and expose and for journalists to find and prosecutors to do something about corruption in public office and in politics, just because it's a little more open. So I'm going to give you some examples of corruption that I actually saw. I was there. I was with the people who were fighting it, by the way, not involved in it. But I hope that what you will see from these examples that I give you and the discussion around it is what a source of inspiration it was for me in my career. As I look back, I came to Austin in 1970. This was after the Vietnam War, Watergate. Those kind of events can shake a person up, make you think when you're just a young kid from Bernie, Texas, had 50 people in my high school graduation, and that you might want to do something about the world. And I serendipitously got the chance to work in the Texas legislature at the time of the Sharpstown bank scandal. In 1971, I think, or 69, the legislature passed a couple of bills for a bank in Sharpstown by a banker named Sharp, who was trying to escape federal regulation on banking. Now, that's not a current topic. And one of the themes you'll see here is I'm talking about things that happened really 50 years ago that I was involved in that sound like an echo in so many things that are still going on today. But he got, with bribery on some, he got the Texas legislature to pass a couple of bills that exempted him, and they went through on what's called the consent calendar. They weren't debated because they might have exposed it. They slipped it through. The Speaker of the House got indicted for bribery, along with others. And the folks that I ended up working for in 1971 in the legislature tried to start an investigation of the Speaker. And on the House floor, they had a resolution to do that. And the Speaker ruled them out of order. Somebody appealed under parliamentary procedure, and they were going to have a vote on whether or not to stand up. Leader of that group, Sissy Farenthold, who I went to work for in her campaign for governor in 1972. She goes on that wall with Sarah Weddington and Ann Richards and a real heroine for Texas. And they had the vote, and only 30 out of 150 members of the House of Representatives voted in favor of having the investigation at all. And one of Gus Mutcher, the Speaker's friends at the back, said, "Those dirty bastards, those 30 dirty bastards." And so the group accepted that moniker, and they called themselves the Dirty 30. There's a book written about it. It looked like an old book. 51 years old. Called Shadow on the Alamo. New Heroes Fight Old Corruption in Texas Politics. I knew Harvey, the author, and I was there during that time. And here we were with massive power in the Texas legislature being misused in all kinds of ways. And yet, there was a group that would stand up and fight. And the lesson from that was that by 1972, the media had reported all the stuff going on and lots of examples of corruption in the Texas legislature. And it actually woke the voters up. And they threw the rascals out in 1972. There was a massive turnover in the legislature. In the next session of the legislature I was working, we got campaign finance reform passed. We got Open Meetings Act passed. We got the Public Information Act passed, and I was working for the House sponsor. Lane Denton was the House sponsor of that bill. The first draft of it came off of my Selectric self-correcting typewriter down in the bowels of the Capitol, room G57 of the Capitol. And we really thought we'd started turning things around, and it was that way for a while. Sissy lost in 1972 and 1974, and since then I've kind of felt like the old power has managed to keep things as they are. I went to work for Bob Bullock in the state controller's office and had a wonderful 3.5 years in that office. But then here I was. I got a grand jury subpoena because I was in charge of records about in the office. There was Bullock, Ralph Wayne was chief deputy, and there's 4 associate deputy controllers. I was one of those. And so I got a subpoena. The chief deputy was accused of using his secretarial help in running his radio companies that he had. He was misusing public funds. He was investigated by Ronnie Earl, who was the district attorney at the time. They did not get an indictment, in spite of the fact that they had tapes, the old Selectric typewriter plastic tapes, and every letter that secretary ever typed was on that tape, and they couldn't get an an indictment out of that. Bullock got mad. He called us a staff conference and said, I want you to go over there to your friends in the legislature and ask them to strike the state funding for the Public Integrity Unit in the Travis County District Attorney's Office. Travis County District Attorney, because it's here, then prosecutes all the crimes that are committed here, and that includes state officials. So he said, if you can't do that, you need to come see me. I sat in my office, best job I'd ever had, 3 kids and a wife at home. I went over to see Mr. Bullock and said, Mr. Bullock, I've worked with these Dirty 30 folks, and I just can't go do that. And he said, I think you ought to quit. And so I did. Turned around and ran for county tax collector. Now they've changed the district attorney's jurisdiction, where if a crime is committed here in Austin at the state capitol, DA can't prosecute here. They have to be prosecuted in the hometown of that legislator. So the DA there gets to decide whether to bring charges. I ran into Lane Denton again when I heard that he had been indicted, my hero, for starting a charity for families of disabled or injured DPS troopers. And he stole hundreds of thousands of dollars from the charity. I've told you about the inspiration of working with people who were fighting corruption, and then let me just show you the heartache that when you see it that close of someone you've admired so much. That's the tension, you see. So if you're not careful, though, you see this corruption, and you see example after example in the private sector and public sector, sometimes in personal lives, but especially in matters of money and power. Be careful, because I know, I've been through it, but you see that corruption, and it leads you to a kind of cynicism that causes you to be doing nothing. And that is the best friend of corruption. First of all, you must see it. That's hard. We don't have the kind of investigative reporters that I was used to working with and tipping back in the early 70s. A lot of that investigative journalism just doesn't make enough money to feed the media organizations that need it. And so you don't even see the investigations going on. Auditors are overwhelmed. They can only do so much. If a prosecutor gets a tip, they've got to have the resources to do it. But if we're not careful, that'll lead to cynicism, and then we're doing nothing, and we won't have change. When I was county judge, the first year I was here, Travis County judge, I got a call from some people, the Chamber of Commerce, and they said, we have a problem with one of your commissioners. Every time there's a contract on the agenda for the commissioner's court for a business to be hired to construct a road or engineering or whatever, they get a call from the commissioner's office who he and his assistant had a business insurance company on the side. And they would explain, well, wouldn't you like to have this contract? Oh, and by the way, don't you need some business insurance? And they were really feeling pressured to do the business. They didn't want to, but they felt like had to. They wanted to get the contract from the county. I went to an excellent, creative attorney in the county attorney's office, and I said, what are we going to do about this? Because catching them and proving bribery, the standards are so high, it's not going to happen. But this should not be in a system of government where you pay to play. If you pay, you shouldn't be able to play. So we adopted an ethics purchasing policy to accommodate the 3 kinds of contracts that governments can give. One is total discretionary contract. It's the kind of service you can give it to anybody you want to. And there's no, you can just say, I want you to have this contract. For those, we decided that if the people were doing business with any key person, and the key person list was not just the commissioner's court, spouses, children, and so forth. It was a long list of people who could affect a purchase. You do business with any of them, you can't get that contract. Next is RFPs, or requests for proposals, where you get a ranking system to decide who has the best proposal. Not necessarily the lowest price, but best proposal. You get negative points if you're doing business with a key person. You got less of a chance to get that contract. The last one is we're required by law to execute the contract to the lowest and best bid. But if you do business, you have to disclose it. You have to put it, as part of the contract, you have to say, I am or am not doing business with these people on the key persons list. And if you lie, the contract says we can claw the money back. So, creatively, we tried to stop that kind of corruption. That policy is still in effect today. Then you have some things that they're not bribery as such, but they kind of stink a bit. An Open Meetings Act violation. I represent the Austin Bulldog, and I don't know if y'all have seen, it's online journalism, Ken Martin. If you haven't, go check it out. Austin Bulldog is on Facebook. I think it's austinbulldog.org. And a friend and client of mine, Brian Rogers, wanted to run for the Austin City Council. And so he went to a council member who was there and said, what's your week like? And he said, well, the beginning of the week, we start our one-on-one and two-on-one meetings with the members of the council. As the meeting comes up to Thursday for the meeting, they take the agenda and they visit with each other. Never have a quorum present, because that would be a direct violation of the Open Meetings Act. But they meet together, and two of them meet with the mayor. And this had started back in the previous administration, but this is when Lee Leffingwell was the mayor. And Brian came to me and described it. I said, that's a walking quorum violation under the Open Meetings Act. So we went to the county attorney's office, David Escamilla, produced the evidence. Ken had asked for copies of emails between them because they were emailing with each other where they were getting a quorum together through emails. That's a violation of the Open Meetings Act. The long and short of that is the county attorney put the entire City Council of Austin on 2 years prosecutorial probation for violating that, with a warning they better not do it again. And then the last example I would give you about corruption is not necessarily illegal. You know, it's not illegal now for members of Congress to go trade stock based on insider information that they get only because they're a member of Congress. It's not illegal. But the irony of it is, if you work for a corporation and you have insider information like that, and you go trade stock based on that inside, it's a crime. So, you got this problem of, well, the same thing going on is illegal if this person does it, but not this person. So, I want to try to end with the kind of inspiration. I chose an inspirational part of my book, and it's talking about what happened after the scandal was exposed and people were starting to want to do something about it. And it says, while the old evils are still with us, textbook myths of white-haired legislators, distrust of young by old, of black by white, our modern world has produced new phenomena that may be even more dangerous. Those political polls and TV images that turn us on to this game of politics and distract us from the guts of government. And those computerized election forecasts that become computerized election victories on television, electronically disconnecting human beings from their governments. The less we give a damn about our public officials and the more we believe that our public officials don't give a damn about us, the closer we will move to the shame of Texas politics. If for no other reason, this is why that handful of rebels in Austin deserves our gratitude. They have shown us that there is a place for mind and flesh and human spirit among all the electric lights of modern government. They've shown us that the most apathetic citizenry can be moved by noble thought, and the human beings do have the power to affect, perhaps even conquer, their mighty institutions. The lessons are there for us to follow if we choose to do so. And finally, I was inspired recently by a song I had not heard Jimmy Buffett sing before. And I'm not going to sing it, but I'm going to close with two phrases out of the lyrics. Even though these are cynical times, bear it in mind. Good guys win every once in a while. State of confusion, we're so disillusioned. You turn on the news and good guys win now and then, just when you think it won't happen again. Thank y'all.
We're going to take the next few minutes to let you ask Bill any questions. I would encourage you not to say your name because I've heard if you ask a lawyer a question, they can send you an invoice. But that's just a lawyer joke. That's just a lawyer joke. Sorry. I see a question down front, a man whose name is not Manny.
Hi, Bill. My name is not Manny. You and I have never met. We've never heard of each other, but I've lived in Austin for 30 years, so your work has affected my life. So my question is, how do we identify agents who are anti-corruption and support them?
You think this ballot coming up in May is going to require some work to figure out? I don't know how you can tell the difference between Prop A and Prop B without actually reading it. And all that's not that easy to do. You read the law that is proposed to be there. And watch for the people who are exposing new information that demonstrate you can trust that new information as it comes out. There are, every now and then, the Austin Monitor will have that. The Austin Bulldog will do that. Every twice in a decade, the American Statesman will. Maybe once every 6 months, the Austin Chronicle will. But, so watch for those. If you're not getting information about who's doing what that way, but it is networking. It is what happened spontaneously 51 years ago that will make the difference. I mean, it is a frustrating thing to be in a small group of people that are trying to stop corruption, but you're just outnumbered. You're outnumbered because of apathy, because other people got so cynical they just quit. You can't quit.
So one of the things that we're constantly hearing is contact your legislators, and contact your legislators when you're not happy with something. What advice do you have when your legislators refuse to listen to the voices of the people and continue to do what they please, regardless of impact on the community?
I know right now, because we have this weird thing in Texas where our Texas legislature is not in session all the time, only for 140 days every other year. For some reason, they appropriately decided to be in the odd year. And so you can't, they're so busy right now, just swamped. I mean, they're with fire hose in the mouth. You're not going to be able, probably, to talk to a legislator, maybe staff, but they're busy too. So the first point about contacting members of the legislature, be prepared well in advance of the legislative session and plan to go see them, especially in their home districts, offices, well in advance of the session. But to a broader question, not just the Texas legislature, and how to get them to pay attention. It is, again, networking. Unless you've got something that personally inspires the public official with your story and says, you know, this is the first time I've ever heard that, but gosh, I'm inspired, I'm going to go do something about it. That's rare, though. It is, they need to hear the noise. Now, as to how to get rid of those who don't pay attention, it is networking. It is. We are in a dangerous position with our democracy now that both parties, the duopoly, as I call them, both Democrats and Republicans, are doing things to preserve themselves in office more than to make sure that the system represents what most Americans want. And so they have jerry-rigged, gerrymandered their districts to make safe Democrats, safe Republicans. And the only thing I can tell you is that the people who are elected from those districts will not change until there's enough of the change of the people that they got surprised by how they voted. That Republicans won't do what the Republicans thought they would do when they did that district, or Democrats either. It's the best I can do for you. Good question. Yes, sir.
How do you convince people who inherently believe another truth? How do you talk to those people? Because that's, I mean, honestly, that's going on, and with sort of these, obviously, the technology going the way it is, unfortunately, that's just going to be worse and worse. Like, how do you get to people at the same point and basically agree on the same sort of facts and draw the same conclusions from those and make government work for everybody the best they can? That's a big question, I know.
You're asking me how in the world to overcome the differences I have with my own daughter. I can't believe she's where she is politically. And we try to talk about facts. I don't care if it's about COVID or anything. She's got her sources of facts. And if it's on the internet, she's convinced. And I think the answer to your question is, don't spend a lot of time arguing about the facts. Talk about values. Talk about, do you think, I don't mean it in a religious way, but, you know, even the golden rule, you know, if we could just get everybody to kind of really get serious about the golden rule, is this the way you would want to be treated if you were in the position of that person who just got pulled over by the police? You know, would you want to be in this position if you were that person you're now victimizing? I don't know. I think that the short answer is don't debate the facts. I mean, if you get to the point where nobody is moving and nobody is accepting that, hey, these facts are on your side, these facts are on my side. We lawyers have to do that. Judges do that all the time, but that's a lot more formal way. And then you've got evidence and good evidence, and there's somebody there to test the evidence. That's the advantage I have of practicing law. A judge is going to decide what the facts are, or the jury is. And it's not going to be as arbitrary as all of our personal political conversations. Focus on values and focus on personal relationships, trying to figure out how to retain them. You know, I just say, Tammy, I love you. I don't agree with you, but I love you.
I think that's a great note to end on as an organization that believes in hugs and high fives. Which would you prefer, Bill? Hug or high five? All right.